Attention Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
In the near far future, it is a corporate feudal state. Greedy conglomerates exploit and overcomplicate the entire planet, and eventually, the stars and co-stars. Electrons and light flow throughout the universe for a price. The advance of computerizationism has not yet wiped out nations and ethnic groups, though not for lack of trying. The apes and the abes, though dressed in more layers and possibly sunglasses, still exist. The horror hosts and pantsless producers now fight to survive. And by fight, we mean complain. You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast. I'm your horror host, Mr. Lobo, and this is my co-host, Paul Sanders, who is floating in space. Paul, are you there?
Oh, what?
Come in.
How long has that record light been on? Oh, did you do the intro yet? Hold on, let me get this. Let me get the script.
I did my whole earnest prologue, Paul. You should have been ready to go.
Oh, there's that spanner wrench I was looking for. Wait, hold on. Oh, I got it. All right, there it is. All right, okay. Can we start with the intro again? I'm ready.
No, I'm not reading the prologue again. The setup of what's going on right now in the world, as you know, Paul, there's the abes and the apes. And they've somehow made peace with each other, and we're living in a mega micro neopolis kind of technological future. All right, we're not quite living in a dystopia, not quite living in a utopia, but some kind of opia, a tapioca, I guess, a tapioca.
Tapioca.
I don't know, a fruitopia, perhaps.
Fruitopia.
You're eating a lot of rice.
I prefer vanilla. So
you prefer vanilla? Yeah, you would. Anyway, so everything's sort of the same. I don't know, but it's run by runaway science. Does that make sense? Science and technology gone amok. Do you have any questions, Paul? I know you've been out in space, so you don't quite know what's like down here on the ground.
And I'm like running with the space madness here. Like I'm itching, literally, like my beard is itching to get back to Earth because I want to know how am I going to have to dress now. Is it? Are we talking Firefly future here? Are we talking like the futuristic Western? Are we talking Logan's Run future, where we're talking about the '60s version of the future where we wear tights and togas?
Well, a lot of retro future styles and modes are acceptable, but yeah, not the Firefly future. There's a lot of people wearing spandex. There's some togas. A lot of kind of pseudo-futuristic attire. It's like being at Forrest Ackerman's costume party, basically. A lot of onesies and tights and things. But robotics, Paul, have advanced quite a bit. We've got a lot of cyborgs and stuff walking around, a lot of people who are integrating technology into themselves. We can replace lost appendages and entire bodies. Paul, you remember Miss Mittens?
Not particularly.
Well, she doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about you either. But anyhow, Miss Mittens was the house plant, who's my co-host. she was actually enjoying the age of the apes. I think because she was doing those watch parties with the mummy and the monkey. I think she got an in with the apes. So much so that I don't know. I don't know if she's identifying as a primate now, but I don't know. She got transplanted into an artificial gorilla robot body. And meanwhile, Romana, who's a robot monster, she's got the gorilla body and the robot head. She got tired of her gorilla body, and then she got transplanted into a ficus. So it's this very mixed up world that we live in now, Paul.
So you mean like they smish smosh, sweet swapped, crisscross, wham bam, thank you ma'am, each other's bodies? They just inserted themselves in each other?
No.
That would have been the easiest thing. Like
That's not, no. That is brain transference, which is a horror sci-fi trope, and we're doing cyberpunk. So that's a totally different kind of thing. They're not just swapping bodies or doing a brain transference. This is an entirely different technological thing. Because of the advance in robotics, you can have a whole nother body.
Now that science has advanced so much that I can actually get a new body and put this 15% of brain that I have left into it. And,
Wait, hold up, Paul. 15%? Okay, after the quadruple bypass lobotomies, on top of the one you had prior, I mean, you still should have like 25% of your brain left.
I've been picking at it.
Oh, Paul, don't pick at it. Anyway, in other news, with the joining forces of the apes and the abes, for a limited time, Paul, they're going to be honoring the defunct chimp bucks. Boy, that's hard to say. Chimp bucks. So now you can cash them in now, but you got to do it quickly because they're going to expire in the next couple of weeks.
Really, that's great news because I first of all, I love saying the word chimp bucks. I love just wrestling with my tongue to say it. Some of the Patreon users has said that they love the idea of chimp bucks, and they mistype it too, which is funny. It's all hell. So, I guess I've got some use for my feces covered chimp bucks. Wonder what I can get.
Paul, you can get whatever you want as long as it's 1,200 tons of bananas.
On the bonus, I was in the market for some bananas, so I do love them nanners, but I ain't putting pants on for the FedEx guy again.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank our Patreon user, Lorraine, for the setup idea towards the banana joke. Thanks a lot, Lorraine. The topic of tonight's episode, we're going to look at a lot of cyberpunk films, specifically Ghost in the Shell, with our special guests, Aaron and Dixie, who we haven't talked to in ages. You remember Aaron and Dixie, don't you, Paul?
I think I might have picked that part away in my brain. I think Aaron's still working with the Amish, though, isn't he? Is that the same Aaron?
Yeah, that is the same. I'm surprised you don't remember Miss Mittens, but you still remember Aaron. Yeah, Aaron, of course, had with the beard, he was abducted by the Amish because he had to. We all have to wear these silly beards everywhere we go, and which, of course, I hate doing because it makes my glasses fog up, or I get chased out of a store because I forgot my beard in the car, and it's just a mess. But anyway, with that, we're going to pause for station identification. And Paul, if you don't stop picking it, it's never going to heal properly.
But it itches.
Ningenが人間であるための部品が決して少なくないように、自分が自分であるためには驚くほど多くのものが必要なの。他人を隔てるための顔、それと意識しない声、目覚めの時に見つめれて幼かった頃の記憶、未来の予感、私の電脳がアクセスできる膨大な情報やネットの広がり、それら全てが私の一部であり、私という意識そのものを生み出し、そして同時に私をある限界に制約し続ける。
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights of Insomnia, Mecha Turbo Microopolis 5 trillion. I'm your host, Mr. Lobo, and Paul and I have been gossiping like a couple of old hens, like a couple of quarterbacks, talking about the glory days, talking about the old days, old media. You know, we're talking about this movie Ghost in the Shell like it's a new thing. I mean, Ghost in the Shell has been around for over, like 25 years or something now?
I think it came out in like 95, I want to say.
Jeez, 95. And then, and of course we're talking about its influences and talking about Blade Runner. And, I was a child when Blade Runner came out. And we're still talking about these movies. Granted,
the live action movie only came out, 3 years ago?
The live action movie is more recent than that. But that live action movie, I mean, if the anime was done in the mid 90s, that live action movie, was probably off and on in the works for decades. We're talking about how we find this stuff, how this stuff finds us, how it affects us. You had a story about when you were in college. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, I'll go with it because, I'm sure that I rented Ghost in the Shell from West Coast Video when it came out. They had an anime section, and there was a time.
Wait a second. Wait, you rented it from West Coast? Don't you mean Suncoast?
No, on the East Coast we have West Coast.
Oh, on the West Coast we had Suncoast. Did you? But we didn't rent videos from Suncoast. We bought videos from Suncoast.
Yeah, the Suncoasts that were here, we bought videos as well, but there were few and far between. It wasn't Blockbuster in this area. It was West Coast.
Oh, okay. So you rented from West Coast and you bought them from Suncoast. And the anime section of a video store usually was like the smallest section of the whole store. And they would do one of two things. Either they would stupidly put it right next to all the children's stuff.
Right.
Or they would treat it like pornography.
You're also right.
What did they do at West Coast Video?
I think they were close to that curtain that went into that back room, but not exactly went into that back room. I think that because some of the import and foreign films, if parents saw them and they complained, they would put a sticker on it for rentals for 18 and over. So if parents saw those videos before anybody else did, that they would complain to the store, and the store would just label them as such. But
yeah,
I'm pretty sure, because I know like Sci-Fi and TNT and probably early Toonami was around that time. That's the only way you could see Japanimation.
That was the big buzzword of early anime, which is hard to believe nowadays. But yeah, the Japanimation wave of the 90s, and it was hard to find a lot of that stuff. Now, the Ghost of the Shell I became aware of just from the midnight movies, and I did see it for sale in Suncoast in that weird section, and it had that funny sticker on it, the "Not for Kids" sticker, where it had like the frowny faced little cartoon of a kid, not for kids. And there was kind of a wave there where we were trying to embrace adult animation in the United States, which for the most part, with a few exceptions like Heavy Metal and a lot of Ralph Bakshi's films, most of the animation content in this country was all centered around children. And to have that kind of sophistication on it, a lot of people when they were in school or in college were watching these movies as adults, not as children.
I was high school to college at that time, so yeah, they were they were swinging for me personally. Really? Why me? Why me, Lobo? Why me?
Why you?
Anyway,
Why you?
So yeah, I'm pretty sure my first run-in was a rental at Suncoast, but it wasn't enough. It was enough to remember it, but not enough to make a big impact. The big impact of it towards me comes about a year later. Way back when I was a younger person, and I had dreams, and I had knew what my future was, and before I was bitter and lonely and floating in space and hating the world.
Now, Paul, you were all those things before you were floating in space.
Granted, but there was a time when I was not as much that. And
I guess that you're kind of wasting your bitterness if you're out in space. You have to be around other people to be bitter.
You can't be bitter and lonely around, alone. You got to be bitter and lonely around other people. I mean, Gal is just kind of hating the bitterness. She's just tired of hearing it all.
You'd think she'd be programmed to accept the bitterness, but I guess even a computer can only take so much.
When I went to college the first time around, I did go 2 times around. But the first time around, I thought I was going to be a fine arts major, and that was a double major, single minor. Any guesses?
Carpentry, dental hygiene, with a minor of Klingon.
Pretty close. That's actually. I'll give you half a point for that.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually a major in video production, a major in theater, and a minor in music. One of the classes for my theater and music major and minor was actually for sound design for theater. So you would look over a script and you would decide what song, where a song would go in place. Try not to Mickey Mouse it. You're not putting. It's not. If you're doing a play, you're not doing a musical, so you're not putting in a lot of music in throughout the whole thing. When it's most effective, so on and so forth. But during that class, the professor said, "Hey, if you're into like some weird sounding music or whatever, there's this band called the Passengers with an album called Original Soundtracks." And he's like, "I really suggest that you guys get this and like listen to it."
Now I've not heard of the Passengers. A band called the Passengers.
Well, have you heard of a band called U2?
Well, yeah, of course. Those douchebags from the UK, Ireland, right?
Yeah. That Flash in the Pan band that's
Flash in the Pan that
did only
cares,
one or two hits
huge,
or stuff.
Yeah, yes, no, huge mainstream, one of the biggest bands on the planet, and they did a lot of soundtracks for some major films, including the Batman movies and all sorts of things.
Batman Forever was actually the song that was just released during this time too. So the Passengers was actually U2. Well, that's their experimental name, so that they could release this album without it muddying the U2 name, and they can kind of do these experimental things with this stuff.
Wow. So the letter U and the number 2, U2 with Bono, the rich guy trying to save the rainforest and recording top 10 hits, recorded an experimental album
of original soundtracks.
Original sound. That's amazing.
1. So
this is sort of like when Stephen King did all that work under Richard Bachman, right?
I don't remember how many hits that they produced that Stephen King produced on an album or not, but
well, Stephen King was doing books. Yeah, he didn't actually record an album, but he just wanted to know whether people were buying his books because they were good, or if they were just buying his books because his name had become so famous. So he had made a few books under Richard Bachman to see if they would sell. Based on the strength of their story and not on the strength of his name. And I think he was pleasantly surprised that a lot of the books that he wrote under his pseudonym did well or better or as good as some of his stuff that was done under the Stephen King name. So tell me about the Passengers.
So yeah, they released this album that was supposed to be original soundtracks. It had, if you read the liner notes, they were describing these films and stuff. And it was a 13-song album. But 10 of those songs were for movies that didn't exist. You might be interested to know was Brian Eno. He co-produced this album. He's one of the Passengers.
Oh, wow. So it's Brian Eno and U2? Well, I love Brian Eno. Brian Eno produced Devo's first album, and Devo is one of my all-time favorite bands. But they're like, I would say Devo's like eclectic, kind of an art band, certainly not mainstream. This is very interesting that Brian Eno and U2 made an album under a different name. This is blowing my mind. So on the Passengers album, they did these songs with Brian Eno, and they and what did it sound like?
Complete trash. No, I'm kidding. No, it's different. I mean, there's a reason why it's experimental. It's very, very different. It's a lot of foreign sounds that they would bring in. Because there's some stuff where they brought in Pavarotti, who was even popular during that time, and he would come in and he would sing.
The opera singer Pavarotti.
Yes, he would sing
telling
tracks.
me that this is like Art of Noise kind of stuff. So we've got the opera singer Pavarotti, Brian Eno, who also produced people like David Bowie, Brian Eno, and U2, all on the same record.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like the kind of record that your college professor gives you.
So, well, one of the songs that stuck out a lot is a song called 1 Minute Warning, which I think on the album was actually credited as Ghost in the Shell. But the actual name to the song is called 1 Minute Warning, which is the end credit song to Ghost in the Shell. And it's kind of one of those things where it worked backwards, where, yeah, I rented Ghost in the Shell, and it kind of stuck with me, but not super stuck with me. And then you're kind of listening to this album, and then this one song is sticking out, and it's like, oh wait, this is to that movie that I at one time had saw and rented and stuff, and brought up those interests to kind of want to rewatch that movie and everything else.
Wow, wow, that's interesting. So that sort of kind of maybe reconnected you to Ghost in the Shell, and then what did you watch Ghost in the Shell again after hearing the song?
Probably. I don't particularly remember renting it, but I do remember when DVDs started coming out. Do you remember when those things came out? Do you remember when that was
absolutely?
popular?
I was one of the. I'm old. I'm an old man, but I was one of the last people to get a DVD player in my circle, but because I hung on to VHS a little bit longer than everybody else. But yeah, I do remember when DVDs came out, and that was a really big deal, and it was exciting, the variety of stuff that came out.
Right. Well, when DVDs came out, my first DVD player was one that I installed in my PC myself. So I bought the drive, and I bought 3 movies. So there's no number one movie that I bought on DVD, because I bought 3 movies at the same time. Mm-hmm. And any guesses what those are?
I would say Disorderlies, Pretty Woman, and Lady Chatterley's Lover.
Do I even need to be on the show? Because apparently you know all the stuff better than I do.
I'll just be speaking for you from now on.
No, it was the Matt LeBlanc remake of Lost in Space.
Oh boy! I briefly about the Matt LeBlanc Lost in Space. If they couldn't get Billy Mooney for that last scene with the grown-up Will Robinson, spoilers, they just should have done a different script, because there was no payoff to do that. I think I probably already had that rant on the show before. Okay, so the Lost in Space, Matt LeBlanc is one of the 3.
Rush Hour is number 2.
Rush Hour. Wait, this is the same Rush Hour with Jackie Chan. Mm-hmm. And Chris Tucker?
Yep.
Wow.
And number 3 would be the anime version of Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, so it all comes back to Ghost in the Shell. Well, Ghost in the Shell, that's interesting. I wonder how much the first 3 DVDs, I can't remember. But I got 2 DVDs when I got our DVD player. And my 2 DVDs, it was another cyberpunk movie. I got Blade Runner and Mr. Bill, a collection of Mr. Bill shorts from Saturday Night Live and the Mr. Bill Show. And on Saturday Night Live, those of you who don't remember, they used to play these like 3-minute clips of Mr. Bill, who was a little clown made out of clay, and then he would get smushed somehow. He gets smashed through a grate or tire. Oh no! Tire would drop on him, or he gets cut in half by an elevator or smushed into an escalator. And it was hilarious for 3 minutes on an episode of Saturday Night Live, but you put it all together on a 2-hour DVD, and you're miserable by the time you get to the end of it. I remember.
I'm miserable just hearing it right now.
Yeah. It's like it does not hold up. It's not like The Simpsons, where it's like, oh, okay, there's these little cute little quips at the end of that are bumping us out into the commercials on the Tracy Ullman show. I wonder how these Simpsons guys would hold up for a series. That little short held out as a series, but Mr. Bill as a series did not hold up. As a DVD, did not hold up like Blade Runner did, which I ended up watching 200 times. And I'm wondering now, how many DVD players did cyberpunk movies sell?
Right.
I feel like you go to any Best Buy and like they'd have the Fifth Element blasting on all their screens to try to sell those DVD players. Those cyberpunk movies, or the Matrix, I mean, high-styled movies, right?
Right. I mean, looking at the format in comparison to VHS, that they could fit more stuff into those things. So there always seemed to be more available, more things that were more obscure even, that were all of a sudden out on DVDs that you never saw on VHS. I mean, you go to Circuit City and you find all this stuff like Brazil and all these films that you would never have seen in a million years on VHS.
Yeah, I think that only 10% of the catalog of films made it to VHS, and VHS, the technology was limited to where all of it had to be recorded onto the tape in real time, whereas you could just press out a DVD and just stamp them out. And so they were much quicker to produce a DVD than a VHS. And I could be, please straighten me out if that's not true in the comments. But,
well, there's probably also less time restriction too.
Less time restriction, and so there's a lot of things. It was very cheap to make VHSs. No moving parts.
Security issues.
No moving parts to a DVD. So so a lot of things started appearing on DVD, and there was this enormous gluttonous push to put everything out on DVD. And I think that is where a lot of people saw a lot of weirdo movies that maybe they wouldn't. And the price break was different, because when VHSs came out, you were paying $80 for a VHS, or you were renting it. Whereas DVDs, you were either renting them for $1 or $2, or you were buying them for $20 or less sometimes.
I watched Ghost in the Shell. I watched that DVD to death, and I remember at the time.
How many times, Paul? How many times do you think you've watched Ghost in the Shell?
How many times did you watch
Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Probably 200 times.
I watched it 201 times. That's how many times I watched it. But I had forced my girlfriend at the time to watch it, and with having to read the subtitles and watch the animation, which is it's tough because that's really good animation, and then have to comprehend it, and then it's also that story is very, very deep to understand. That when it was all over, she's like, "What the hell did you just make me watch?"
Yeah, I felt like that watching Akira. What the hell did I just watch? And if you're wondering, and probably that's what you're wondering at home too, what the hell are you watching? Well, you're not watching anything. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights of Insomnia, and we'll be right back.
Do you like Mr. Lobo? And do you like it when Mr. Lobo does stuff? Well, you're in luck. Mr. Lobo Does is now available on video on demand. See groundbreaking hits like Fidget Spinners and Halloween, or the award-winning Procrastination. 17 episodes to choose from to binge all at once. But wait, there's more! Included are alternative scenes, deleted scenes, and fun extras exclusive to the set. You're not going to see these puppies anywhere else. Nab your copy today while supplies last. Operators are standing by at
pODDmld1.bestow.tv. That's pODD1.bestow.tv.
So that was the past future of the past, talking about the future past, or the fast future. And then fast forward to the future, which is still the past future, because we're a little bit past that future. But they had a Ghost in the Shell feature film that came out, what was that, a year or two ago?
2017.
2017. Wow, that seems like a million years ago with all the things that have happened in the world. And so
in 1 week alone.
In 1 week. Every week is a new year. the 90s to 2017, that's a long time. I feel like that's 20 years in the making for a feature film. And now who put that out? Now, the original was a Japanese production, and then the feature film was what, made in America?
Yeah, Paramount Pictures distributed. DreamWorks worked on it. Shanghai Film Group worked on it. Arad Productions, Arad, A-R-A-D. I can't figure, but he.
Wow! So this is a international production. They've got some Chinese money in there. They've got New Zealand folks in there.
Arad is the guy who he produced the Marvel movies, the original Spider-Man and stuff like that. He produced the cartoons, so you got kind of Marvel movie, so to speak.
Oh, well, that kind of explains the connection with Scarlett Johansson a little bit.
Yeah, doesn't it?
So, Paul, you have a lot to say about this movie before we go talk to Dixie and Aaron about this.
Yeah, I know we were really eating into their time, so I'm going to I'll try to get this over real quick, but. I wanted to like this movie, but it was just overshadowed by the whitewashing thing. Or
whitewashing. Now, the way I understand it is that people were upset that Scarlett Johansson was cast instead of what, a Japanese actress,
an Asian American, a Japanese
American actress,
whatever. Yeah. So they all felt that was a role for a Asian character to play, not an American character. Where the source material may not necessarily call for that, where the source material is, like for Attack on Titan or Full Metal Alchemist, those are more dramatic or Germanic?
Well,
if they're acting, they're dramatic Germanics. People from German descent are supposed to be playing those roles, and they're not necessarily Asian. And some of the same groups are arguing, well, if we make those movies, they have to be Asian Americans. Where it's like, yeah, I kind of understand, but the source material doesn't necessarily lean either way for those characters anyway.
So in a way, it's somewhat racist to assume because it's a Japanese movie that these characters are supposed to be or should be or have to be Japanese characters.
Right. And I mean, when I watched the original movie, I never thought of Major as being an of Asian descent, because, Batu isn't of Asian descent either. And he wasn't portrayed as being Asian, and nobody had a problem with that character in that movie.
Honestly, I don't think about race with cartoon characters in the first place. Mm-hmm. On my money, because we were talking about this the last time, or I think it was the last time we were talking about Speed Racer, where if you look at their little the little funny scarves and everything, and the how they're depicted, they're probably French or Italian or someplace where they do famously a Formula One, what is it, Grand Prix, right? That's French.
Right.
We think of Speed Racer as being Japanese, but I don't think that is a Japanese family that's being depicted in the Speed Racer cartoon. So, the Scarlett Johansson character, I think that whitewashing kind of put a bitter taste in my mouth because I was a little ignorant about the source material. So I didn't go see it in the theater, and I don't think you did either, right?
I didn't either. Well, first of all, Scarlett Johansson was in every damn movie to begin with, and second of all, it was just this whole scandal. It wasn't just this movie, but it was a whole series of movies where they were just yelling at the production companies. And it's they're trying to do the best to get their money back and put butts in seats. Unfortunately, those are sometimes the risks that you have to take, because, if when we make The Grudge, we're not casting Asian Americans. We're casting whoever we want to put asses in seats, and vice versa. If they were to make Star Wars, they would put whatever their country's best actors or actresses are in those roles, and it wouldn't matter to us.
Well, and interestingly enough, I think in other countries they would probably they wouldn't necessarily put Japanese people in those roles either. I don't think they have the same kind of hangups we do with race as in this country.
I think they even did interviews during when the movie was coming out, and people in the Asian cultures said that they saw no problems with Scarlett Johansson. They had no problems with this. They didn't have issue with that. It was just it's just us, honestly, as Americans.
The problem started way before that. If you only cast Scarlett Johansson and everything, there's a short list of actresses in general that are going to be able to carry a $400 million movie. So, the sad part about that is that we haven't been giving good roles to people of different nationalities and groups all along. We can't fix it with just one movie, unfortunately. It would have been a brave thing for them to do, but they're certainly not required to do that, especially when the source material doesn't require it of them. And in looking at that character, and I hate to be this sort of like, turning it into like examining ethnic features of a character, but looking at that character, she's got kind of a big nose. She's not particularly Asian. The character doesn't seem to be particularly Asian. And she's a robot. And sadly, if you were to make a multi-billion-dollar robot, you would make it look like a movie star. You would make it look like Marilyn Monroe or Angelina Jolie or Scarlett Johansson, because that's how you get something like that paid for.
And the thing is like, despite all this stink, seeing the movie afterwards, I got the movie for free as a digital download. And that's how I ultimately ended up seeing it. And it's like, shot for shot, it's really spot on to the anime. The characters look like the characters from the anime. The story's somewhat similar. It goes a little bit different, not as deep, but it's actually not that bad. It's just the shame that the stink of this carried over, that it just kind of affected the movie going experience. I guess this is the thing where it's the toxicity of the moviegoers that kind of ruined it. The
cancel culture, the toxicity. Ooh, I can't even say that.
I didn't either. I tripped over it too.
The cancel culture that we're living in, where it becomes to just the whole thing just stops being fun anymore. I watched it. And I also thought it was somewhat faithful to the anime, but unfortunately in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, is this racist? Is there something inherently racist about this? Because it's a Japanese woman living inside of an Anglo body, is that racist? The other thing I thought was interesting is they put little kind of weird makeup on the corners of her eyes and kind of gave her sort of cat eyes and had her in the straight hair. I think just trying to make her look more Asian might have been a mistake if they were getting that kind of criticism for that character.
And the thing is that, if I would have watched this today with that same girlfriend, I think she would have been more appreciative and enjoyed it more so than this. Whereas I would probably be like, I still prefer the original anime.
And I'm sure that was the whole point, right? I'm sure that was the whole point, is to bring it to a broader audience, not the fanatics who are already into it. Right. So I guess this would be a good opportunity to maybe talk to our movie experts that we've invited to this exciting Ghost in the Shell Summit. Aaron and Dixie. So Paul, are you okay in the space pod? I was thinking of switching signals here and bringing in Dixie and Aaron.
Yeah, I'm gonna play some darts and see if I can maybe pin my pants to the wall so that they stop floating around.
You do that.
Okay.
We're here in the Insomniac Lounge with Dixie Delamorto Lobo, my lovely wife.
Howdy.
Aaron just got himself something from the honor bar, some sort of Fiji Bombay sapphire.
That would be correct.
Delicious. All right. Well, Dixie, of course, now I know you guys never listen to Paul or his part of the podcast.
We try not to.
Yeah. But he's floating in space, and one of the things he was talking about this movie Ghost in the Shell, which is the topic.
Okay.
Major has the suit where she's nude. In the comic book, she's nude.
Yeah.
And we're thinking that in the comic book, okay, that she's just a robot. There's no need for modesty or whatever. And, that's how her camouflage is generated, right?
Yeah.
But in the movie, of course, we don't know the reasons why, but Scarlett Johansson, can't be nude, but she's wearing this bodysuit that is a suit, but that it's not a suit. Why couldn't it just be her skin or something, right?
Right.
So that's what some, if we can believe that she's got an 8-track eye, her skin could just look like that underneath, right?
Well, and I think part of that's probably not that she couldn't be nude, because with the right angles, I think you could get a PG-13 still, see stuff suggestively without seeing anything. But I think she either asks for a lot more money or just won't do it at all, as far as nudity goes.
But I think there are some scenes in there where she's pretty much nude,
When
right?
she's being generated at the beginning, when she's being built, she's basically nude. But that's completely CG, which honestly they could have gotten away with just having that creamy doll-like body. That sounds saucy.
I was thinking like one of those funny dolls that you buy where the head is made out of rubber, but then the rest of it's cloth.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
Sure.
then like one of the, I can't remember if it was Sin City 1 or 2, they cast Jessica Alba as a stripper, and then she refused to do nudity. And so they literally like filmed her with underwear on and then filmed someone else naked and composited their bodies together.
Wow.
Interesting.
I feel like
But I
that's-
think you have to get the actor to agree to that. And I
Right.
don't think Scarlett will agree to that.
Yeah, you don't want. She doesn't want a body double.
Yeah. But I think with Sin City, it was a thing of we're either doing this or you got to go.
Wow,
And so she agreed to that.
that's rough.
So you agree with Paul basically that it,
Yeah, I think the suit's lame. I don't think it looks good.
yeah, because I think there's a scene where it's zipped down and then you see her regular skin there, and then she gets into that suit, right?
I mean, they don't. I don't.
And if
think-
she's getting
I don't
into
recall
it-
them showing her getting into that suit.
But there are scenes where she has it and where
Right,
she doesn't.
yeah.
They should either show it coming out of her somehow, where it like morphs out of her, maybe to activate the camouflage.
Now I'm picturing her having this like Dr. Venture tracksuit that just looks like a naked girl over the
God.
top of her body.
Nipples painted on it.
Yeah.
Terrible. Well, and I don't.
Those horrible bikinis where it looks like a guy's
A
hairy
man's
chest.
chest. Yeah, I've seen those. Horrible. Oh,
Stuff of nightmares. We've
Wonderful.
managed to take a movie that already got a lot of shit and make it worse.
worse. Yeah. She could have that Borat like one piece.
It's nice.
We fixed it. We just fixed it. There you go.
So yeah,
Scarlett Johansson in a lime green banana hammock.
now
Yankee.
you've seen this movie a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah.
mean,
What's
saying
I
it
mean,
like that.
both times, and I mean, I watched it recently,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember half of what happened in it.
But
It's
I mean,
sort
the
of-
anime's kind of like that too. I feel
Right.
like I've seen it a few
I've
times,
never-
but if you ask me to take a magic marker and tell you what the plot is, I
Yeah.
think
And I
I
remember when we went and watched it the other day, I was like, I've never seen this before. We get like 10 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, wait, I've seen this before. I just didn't retain any of
Yeah.
it.
But I didn't think it was bad.
No,
No.
it's just there.
it's beautiful to look at. Actually, I wrote a review of this on Letterboxd when I first saw it, and I kind of am famous for my one sentence reviews on Letterboxd, and my review was beautiful and boring, just like Scarlett Johansson.
Ooh, sick burn.
That
Sorry,
seems fair.
but it's really nice to look at. I actually think that Scarlett Johansson is rather pretty, and especially in this movie, even though they're trying their damnedest to make her look Asian.
Now, see, that's the thing that kind of burns it because, in the beginning, it's like it got all this criticism because you've got a white person perhaps taking a role away from a non-white person. But then you look at the anime and you're like, well, this character might not be an Asian looking character, right?
She does have.
But then in the movie, they put those weird eyes on her
Yeah.
and make her hair a lot darker, and so she seems like a white person trying to be a.
They basically Charlie Chan her.
They Charlie
Yeah.
Chan her, and then they changed her name. Aaron, is that?
Yeah. And I think somewhere towards the end they do reveal the original name, but like originally I think her name was Motoko. It was either Motoko or Makoto, and
It's like Mira.
I think
or
they changed it to Mira, something like that in the movie.
Yeah. I think it was a big misstep. I mean, it was right in the height of the Oscars so white thing,
Yeah.
casting her as an Asian character and then trying to make her look Asian was just a total
Might as well have
Party
gone
foul.
with Julia Roberts as Harriet Tubman.
right. Let's not talk about that ever.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think the cancel culture was just sort of blossoming then, and then the Oscars so white. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Dixie. So when we come back, I guess we will be talking a little bit more, right? About this movie. We're going to go a little bit deeper
Yeah.
into this movie.
If we must.
And maybe we'll get to the Matrix and some of the things that were that it influenced,
Sure.
that the original influenced, or vice versa,
All right.
when we get back with more Sleepless Nights of Insomnia.
I saw someone down there. He wasn't human.
He's a known terrorist, and he's killed again.
They didn't just kill them. They hacked into their minds.
is everywhere and nowhere.
I will find him. And I will kill him.
You never talk about your past.
I don't remember much. Just fragments.
There was an attack.
You were dying. We saved you. And now you save others.
Everything they told you was a lie.
You had a family. Remember that.
What do you want from me?
They did not save your life. They stole it.
How many were there before me?
She was supposed to have a clean brain. I order you to terminate.
They created me, but they cannot control me.
We're back, and we're having a heated discussion about race here in the Insomniac Future Noir Lounge. Now, we were talking about the whitewashing of the show, and like Paul and I both had the same experience where we didn't see it in the theater initially because of all the controversy on it. Kind of like just took the fun out of it, really.
Right.
Well, and I remember when we were watching it the other day, I was like, oh, I've never seen this. And I got like 10 minutes. And I was like, wait a minute. I saw this in theaters, and it's just like I just didn't remember it until we started watching it.
Yeah, and I think every time I watch it, I forget what happens.
Yeah, it's pretty forgettable.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah,
but it's not bad.
It's just misunderstood.
Very misunderstood.
Somebody should coin that. Maybe Rob Zombie.
Rob Zombie needs to trademark that.
Oh God, let's never talk about him ever.
Okay, so but again, I think that the weirdness there is that we said before about the makeup
making
on the
her look
eyes
Asian,
and
it's ridiculous.
Giving her the Charlie Chan treatment, basically.
Yeah. But, I think that I know that we'd want to see more roles like that, right, Dixie?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be amazing if they started giving those roles to people of color, especially, if it's a established character that is supposed to be a person of color. I mean, they did that a little bit in Doctor Strange. Didn't quite hurt them as much to cast that woman as that Celtic woman as that Tibetan man.
Yeah, Paul brought that up too.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't listen to Paul.
Well, and the way that they dodged around it was they replaced one marginalized group with a different marginalized group.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I just like in Hollywood's climate, I don't see them giving those roles to people of color. I think that it would be easier, especially if they're trying to avoid all the controversy. They probably are less likely to make a film adaptation where they would be challenged on their casting. So there'll probably be less anime adaptations, things like that, just so that, I don't know, to keep white executives comfortable. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I remember a while back there was a fairly big budgeted movie that they were in pre-production on that was about a pretty famous like trans person, and they were casting like a straight white girl playing the part, and people had a big old fit on Twitter demanding that they cast a trans actor to play the part, and they were just like, fine, and then they scrapped the whole movie. They're just like, we're just not going to bother them.
Wow. Didn't Jared Leto play a trans person?
I believe he did once.
Yeah. They cast a trans woman to play Frankenfurter in that.
Oh yeah, and
Fox.
The live. Rocky Horror.
But I think in that case, it almost kind of like takes the whole weirdness out of the whole thing. You know what I mean? I mean, I feel like that. No, transsexuals from Transylvania is a.
Well, they're not even humans. They're aliens.
Is a sort of cheeky sort of thing, and this is sort of like this is a real. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the case of the Fox thing where they did it live, I feel like they were probably thinking that was empowering. I don't think that was a completely successful thing either.
No, it kind of fell on its face.
Yeah, I mean, and the trans woman being Frankfurter was the least of their problems, honestly. But yeah,
it's much more subversive that it's just that it's a man with both of those, with Brad and Janet.
Yeah.
Versus it being a trans woman with Brad and Janet. I feel like that's not quite as subversive.
I mean, you still have the lesbian thing in that case.
But people are a lot more accepting of a lesbian relationship
than they are.
That's not what we're talking about.
No,
here,
we got totally
off base.
That's a whole nother podcast.
But
is Rocky Horror.
Tell me about the whitewashing or the corporate.
I have a quote here from the distribution chief at Paramount. They basically took no responsibility. They just seem to kind of glide over the fact that probably the whitewashing was a huge part of their failure.
They're not taking any responsibility for any missteps that they may have made.
Maybe. So what the distribution chief at Paramount had to say was, you've got a movie that is very important to fanboys since it's based on a Japanese anime movie. So you're always trying to thread that needle between honoring the source material and making a movie for a mass audience. That's challenging, but the reviews didn't help.
You know how those fanboys are.
Yeah.
Basement dwelling neckbeards.
I feel like that is a shitty statement on many levels. It's an onion of
definitely slap in the face to the fans.
Yeah.
And then also kind of what were you saying?
Just kind of dancing around the fact that there was a major misstep in casting.
we thought you nerds also liked Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. Isn't that who you're fapping to?
Yeah. They're already wanking in their mother's basement. Scarlett Johansson. Let's stick that with their anime cartoons and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, so you're saying like 10 years earlier they would have cast Buffy as that character.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Jennifer Love Hewitt or Sarah Michelle Gellar.
But placate the they were thinking they were placating the fanboys, but again, making a huge misstep.
It was a little bit later, maybe Megan Fox.
Oh, God. Let's not talk about Megan Fox. I mean, in a way, it's like they sound like they're trying to placate them, but at the same time, not giving them anything even remotely to what they would want. Like,
it's sort of a backhanded apology.
Totally. It's not an apology at all.
They don't mind pandering to an audience, but they don't want to serve an audience.
Right. And it's just, I don't know. They I don't know, pisses me off. Lost my train of thought there.
That's okay.
I'm flustered. But yeah, I just think that's a cop-out answer to why that movie lost so much money.
Well, they made, what did it cost? Like $110 million to make the movie. And then you were saying, Aaron, that's probably double.
Like budget numbers are always kind of misleading with movies because if it costs them $110 million to make the movie, they'll dump another $110 million into marketing. So in order to break even, usually with a movie, you have to make double your budget before you're even considered broken even.
Okay, and this movie made what?
Made $60 million on that.
Oh,
it made $7.25.
Yeah, it didn't. Also, I'm not sure, but we might have covered that in the first half.
No, I don't think we did.
No. All right.
We're going to have a lot of deja vu probably during this segment.
Deja vu all over again.
Anyway.
It's a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
I saw the same cat walking by like 3 times during this interview.
It's that woman in the red dress.
Well, if it didn't jump up on your shoulder, it's probably not my cat.
Let's talk about the Matrix for a minute.
Okay.
I think that on top of the whitewashing and it just not being a very compelling story and spurning an entire fan base by condensing this thing into like
snubbing an entire fan base.
Snubbing an entire fan base into like mashing this thing into a convoluted mess. I think that one of the biggest things it suffers from is the fact that the Matrix got there firstest with the mostest.
Firstest with the mostest. Yeah, Paul and I have talked about this a little bit at length, where it's like, you know, the RoboCop got to Judge Dredd before Judge Dredd happened, and Starship Troopers didn't have as much resonance because Aliens already happened, which adapted the book Starship Troopers. So this, in the way that happened, we saw Matrix. American audiences saw the Matrix,
right? Which is, I mean, like right down to exploding watermelons taking shots from Ghost
the
in the
animated
Shell.
Ghost in the Shell.
The animated Ghost in the Shell. Which honestly, they if they had exploding watermelons in the new movie, and actually I don't know, do they have exploding watermelons?
I don't remember.
It's been like 4 days since we watched
it.
So
it might have as well been an eon ago. I don't remember
it just as well the second time as I did from seeing it the first time.
So, but the Matrix, basically when they were presenting the movie.
Yeah. When they were, I believe, I've always heard that when they were trying to have the film made, getting, you know, money, financing for it, they were showing people the Ghost in the Shell animated movie and saying, we want to do a live action version of this.
Well, I know that was something we were talking about when we were doing the research for this too, was that I remember Ghost in the Shell having come out much earlier than it actually did. I was surprised to find out it came in like the late 90s. So it was only a few years between its release and the Matrix's release, where for some reason I thought it came out in like the 80s.
Yeah,
I think everyone has that feeling about that, and that might be because
Mandela.
of the Mandela, yes. The Mangadella.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, there was the manga, the manga that came out,
Yeah.
and then I think that I think Ghost in the Shell is informed a lot by Blade Runner and Akira.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people mistakenly think that Akira and Ghost in the Shell are like contemporary, like they happened.
Yeah, like they came out near each other.
Yeah,
and I think that they all influence. And Paul and I followed this thread. I think it all goes all the way back to Heavy Metal magazine. Ridley Scott probably had the thing that happened with the Matrix, where they were probably making a movie, and then they saw Ghost in the Shell and went, oh, no, this is the movie we're making now.
Yeah, I believe we saw what Mobius's art.
And then,
like, this is it.
Ridley Scott saw Heavy Metal and went, oh, no, we're not doing Philip K. Dick anymore.
Yeah.
This is what we have to make. We have to get to the heavy metal city.
And thankfully, he did. Thankfully, France.
He did. Thank you, France, for a lot of things.
Yeah.
For
your fries.
Dressing.
For your dip.
Yeah. But I think but then we've got the thread goes from heavy metal and heavy metal probably forks into Blade Runner and Akira.
Sure.
And then Akira probably informed the manga, which informed the anime, which informed the Matrix. Right.
Sure.
And then now when we see of course the effect when people saw, and the code is in there too, right?
Right. Yeah. That's like that thing from the Matrix. I'm using air quotes. You can't see because this is audio.
Yeah. And I feel like people saw the Ghost in the Shell movie and were like, this is just a rip off of the Matrix, not realizing that it was the other way around.
Yeah.
And if they had placated the fans of the anime a little more, they could have enjoyed that audience of people rather than reaching over them to get a more mainstream audience, which has already seen The Matrix and is unimpressed.
Yeah. It's a niche audience. The people that love
cyberpunk
movies and anime, you know, you've got a niche audience, and then to just kind of ignore anything that they might desire.
We don't need those people. We need real people to come see our movie.
We need all of America
to love this. It's got to play in Peoria.
Yeah. Everybody loves Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
Just have her play a Japanese person. It's fine.
Oh, what person do people want to see naked the most? Okay, she's cast.
We'll make them think they're going to see it. Yeah. We'll just have her wear a weird suit that covers up everything.
But then we'll make $1 million selling funny suits to anime kids.
Yeah. This was $1 million idea that they had on a $110 million.
They wrote it on a napkin and they thought they couldn't fail.
Yeah, and they failed.
Miserable. As almost always seems to happen.
Yeah,
almost inevitably.
Why is it that this keeps happening? I mean, we have a culture, right? We have an entitled fan base I guess we can say, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got people who play video games and they're used to things going their way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when they have a form of entertainment in which someone else is making the choices, they get a little, they immediately will discount something if a choice is made that they can't immediately understand or get behind.
Well, and it's usually an old white out of touch bean counter who's making those artistic decisions and is sure they know better than the artistic people who should be making the decisions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we said a lot about Ghost in the Shell, and we said a lot about cyberpunk.
Yeah.
There's a cyberpunk game coming out this year.
Cyberpunk 2077. There's a little bit of hot news on that. Aaron, what were you just reading?
There's a lot going around on the internet now because in the character customization, they're letting you design your own genitals of your character.
They just did that with Animal Crossing.
Oh, God. Oh, okay. Goodbye. Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Note, we will be meeting again. We're all going to meet in the diner and kind of catch up about what we've been doing the past year.
Maybe I can mention, talk about these 20 pages of notes about Keanu Reeves that I...
You bring those, and lots of mustard.
Maybe, if we have time.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
P'Oddcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Dead House Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo. MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at Bestow.tv, on YouTube /Bestow TV, on Twitter at Bestow Prod, PROD, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast.
That's
Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Knights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
P'Oddcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.